Jack Ruby had something to say. Something he couldn't say in Dallas. He asked the chief investigator of the Kennedy assassination to move him somewhere safe so he could talk. The answer was no. Ruby died before anyone asked him again, and whatever he wanted to say went with him. That exchange is in the Warren Commission record, and almost nobody knows it happened. November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas, President John F. Kennedy is shot and killed while riding in an open motorcade in front of hundreds of witnesses. Lee Harvey Oswald, a 24-year-old former Marine who defected to the Soviet Union and came back with a Russian wife, is arrested that afternoon. 2 days later, on live national television, a Dallas nightclub owner named Jack Ruby walks through a crowd of police and reporters and shoots Oswald once in the stomach. Oswald dies 2 hours later. He never stood trial. The Warren Commission, appointed by President Johnson and chaired by Chief Justice Earl Warren, investigates for 10 months and concludes that Oswald acted alone. Case closed, and for the most part, that is still the official story. But here's where it starts to fall apart. The Warren Commission concluded that one bullet caused 7 separate wounds to 2 different men. It entered Kennedy's upper back, exited his throat, then struck Governor Connally in the back, shattered his 5th rib, exited his chest, pierced his wrist, and lodged in his thigh. The bullet recovered at the hospital. Commission Exhibit 399 was found in near pristine condition after passing through 15 inches of tissue and breaking 2 bones. Governor Connally, the man seated directly in front of Kennedy and supposedly struck by this same bullet, never accepted that conclusion. He maintained until his death in 1993 that he and Kennedy were hit by separate bullets. If he was right, there was not enough time for Oswald to fire twice from a bolt-action rifle, which means a second shooter. That is not a fringe position. That is what the man who survived the shooting believed about his own wounds. Now here's the part about the FBI that almost never gets discussed. Days before the assassination, Oswald walked into the FBI's Dallas field office and hand-delivered a threatening note to the agent surveilling him and his wife. That note survived the assassination. Then FBI leadership ordered it destroyed. The agent's name was also removed from a copy of Oswald's address book before it was presented to investigators. Agent James Hosty confirmed all of this in a published memoir. The FBI's own explanation was that the note would have proven the Bureau knew Oswald was dangerous before Kennedy arrived in Dallas and failed to act. The FBI destroyed evidence in a presidential assassination investigation. Hosty said so himself. And then there is the CIA. Oswald had been on the agency's radar long before Dallas. He defected to the Soviet Union in 1959, returned in 1962 with a Soviet wife, and in September 1963, just 2 months before the assassination, visited Mexico City and met with officials at both the Soviet and Cuban embassies. CIA documents released in March 2025 confirmed that the agency's surveillance of that trip was far more extensive than what they disclosed to the Warren Commission. Historian Philip Shannon, who spent years studying the documents, was direct about it. The CIA lied to the Commission, presenting Oswald as an unforeseeable lone wolf when they had been actively monitoring him for months. The agency withheld the extent of its Oswald surveillance from the only investigation authorized to determine who killed the president. If Oswald acted alone and the CIA had nothing to hide, why lie? Now back to Jack Ruby. 2 days after the assassination, Ruby shoots Oswald on live television. He says he was overcome with grief. He says he acted alone. The Warren Commission accepts that. Case closed, again. But in June 1964, Ruby sits down with Chief Justice Warren in his Dallas jail cell and says something that should have changed everything. He tells Warren his life is in danger. He says he has information he cannot safely share in Dallas. He asks to be taken to Washington, D.C. so he can speak freely. He tells the chief investigator directly, "I want to tell the truth, and I cannot tell it here." Warren declines, cites logistical difficulty. Ruby's conviction was overturned on appeal in 1966. Before a second trial could take place, he was diagnosed with rapidly advancing cancer and died in January 1967. Whatever he wanted to say in Washington was never said. The House Select Committee on Assassinations later found that Ruby's shooting of Oswald was not spontaneous. It involved premeditation. The committee also concluded he likely received assistance getting into the police basement, though that help may have been provided without knowledge of his intentions. Premeditated, with possible outside help, by a man who told the Chief Justice he was afraid to speak in Dallas. And that brings us to the finding that almost nobody knows about. In 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations formally concluded that Kennedy was probably killed as the result of a conspiracy. A second shooter was likely involved. That is the conclusion of a formal congressional investigation with subpoena power, and it sits on the record alongside the Warren Commission's lone gunman finding, two official U.S. government investigations, opposite conclusions, neither reversed. The acoustic evidence underlying the 1979 finding was later disputed by the National Academy of Sciences. The conspiracy conclusion itself was not withdrawn. So the official position of the United States government is, simultaneously, that Oswald acted alone and that he probably didn't. Here's what the documented record shows. The FBI destroyed a threatening note Oswald wrote before the assassination and altered evidence to conceal its own prior knowledge. The CIA withheld the extent of its Oswald surveillance and was confirmed to have misled the commission. The man who killed Oswald told the Chief Justice he had things he couldn't safely say in Dallas, and the Chief Justice said no. And the only subsequent government investigation, with subpoena power, concluded that Kennedy was probably killed by more than one person. None of that proves a conspiracy, but all of it means the official investigation was built on a record that had already been destroyed, altered, or withheld by the agencies it was supposed to scrutinize. Because this was never just a question about one man with a rifle on the 6th floor. It is a question about what happens when the institutions responsible for finding the truth are the same ones with the most to lose from it. Only 38% of Americans believe Oswald acted alone. More than 4,700 JFK documents remain redacted in the National Archives today. And the question Jack Ruby wanted to answer in Washington, the one the Chief Justice said no to, has never been asked again. So here's where this leaves you. Two official investigations, opposite conclusions, evidence destroyed, lies confirmed, a key witness who died before he could speak. What do you think they didn't tell you? Tell me in the comments, because 60 years later, that question is still open.